You see the interview last night? Oprah returned with Meghan and Harry in what will surely go down in history as the most shocking gender reveal party of all time. At least 17 million Americans watched. Only the Super Bowl and the season premiere of The Equalizer, featuring another queen, Latifah, had more viewers this year, which is huge. If only there was a way these Oprah specials could vaccinate us, too. It would be amazing.
It's the first week of January 2026. Late-night shows are back after the holiday break, and everyone's slowly getting back into the swing of work and family life. But on Jimmy Kimmel's set, something unusual happened, something nobody expected. Instead of the usual gentle celebrity jokes, Kimmel opened his first show of the new year with what many are calling the most brutal takedown of Meghan Markle on mainstream television in years. He showed a clip from her Netflix show, With Love, Meghan, where she sits in her Montecito kitchen, talking about bringing people together around the dinner table, creating authentic connections, and being present with the people you love. Standard lifestyle advice about family and community, warm, polished, relatable. But then Kimmel cut back to the studio, looked directly at the camera, and asked, "Beautiful advice, Meghan, really touching. Quick question, when's the last time you had dinner with anyone who actually knew you before you were famous? Your Suits co-stars, your family, anyone at all?" The audience erupted. Standing ovation. And just like that, Kimmel exposed the hypocrisy that nobody in mainstream media had dared to say out loud. Meghan Markle has been teaching people about connection and authenticity, while systematically burning every real connection from her actual life. But that was only the beginning. What followed over the next 2 nights would make it clear that Hollywood's long-standing protection of her image was over, and that the carefully curated persona she had spent years building was suddenly vulnerable to public ridicule. From failed brands to canceled podcasts and flopped Netflix projects, everything that had been quietly piling up was now on display for millions of viewers. And as the laughter echoed through the studios, one question hung in the air. Can anyone really spin back the story once the industry that defended you for years decides it's time to stop? The very first night back, Jimmy Kimmel didn't just tell jokes, he delivered a lesson in precision. He started by showing Meghan's With Love, Meghan clip, where she's in full lifestyle guru mode, talking about gathering loved ones around the dinner table, creating meaningful moments, and being present with the people who matter most. Warm, relatable, polished, everything her brand promises. The audience leaned in, absorbing every word. Then came the punch. Kimmel cut back to the studio and asked the question that had been lurking under the surface for years. Beautiful advice, Meghan, really touching stuff about bringing people together. Now tell us, when's the last time you actually did that? Your Suits co-stars, your family, literally anyone from before you were famous? The room exploded. Standing ovation. The brilliance wasn't just in the joke, it was in the setup. Kimmel let her sell the performance first, then expose the gap between image and reality. Here was someone making millions teaching authenticity, while systematically burning real-life connections, and it didn't stop there. Every clip Kimmel showed, every carefully worded phrase from Meghan's show, highlighted the same pattern: polished words, scripted warmth, but a lack of actual connection. By framing her advice against the reality of her relationships, Kimmel wasn't just joking. He was cataloging a discrepancy that millions of viewers couldn't ignore. That monologue set the stage. It wasn't just a critique. It was a signal that the era of unquestioned support for her carefully managed image was over. Audiences were now primed to see the next layer: repeated professional failures, flopped projects, and public missteps that would confirm the pattern. And what happened next would make it clear. When the comedians who once defended you decide it's time to stop, the consequences are unstoppable. The very next night, Stephen Colbert picked up where Kimmel left off, but he didn't just tell jokes. He produced a full segment designed to dismantle Meghan Markle's carefully curated empire. The segment was called Brands That Nobody Asked For, and it immediately set the tone. This wasn't about playful celebrity teasing, it was a public examination of failure disguised as comedy. Colbert started with warm-up examples of celebrity ventures, tequila lines, makeup brands, luxury products, things audiences could laugh at but not take personally. Then he shifted to Meghan, and the energy in the studio changed. She was the real target. First came the jam, the exclusive spread she sent to celebrity friends as a promotional stunt. Colbert joked that it sold out because only 12 jars were ever made, and even those who received it for free didn't want it. The audience erupted. Then came the brand itself. American Riviera Orchard, a lifestyle empire with grand ambitions, but the trademark got rejected for being too geographically descriptive. Meghan rebranded as ever and launched products anyway. Marketing experts tore the execution apart, calling it one of the worst celebrity launches they'd seen. Amateur mistakes, missed communications, and wildly overhyped expectations turned a simple jam into a viral joke. Colbert didn't stop there. He listed the failures in a rapid-fire montage: Netflix cooking show, flopped podcast, canceled brand, a punchline. Every observation landed, and the audience laughed not at exaggeration, but at the pattern itself. The comedy wasn't mean-spirited, it was factual, exposing something undeniable. Meghan's ventures consistently failed, not because of bad luck, but because of execution and lack of authenticity. By connecting these failures to her public persona, someone who teaches connection, authenticity, and hard work, Colbert highlighted the irony in a way audiences couldn't ignore. The message was clear. Her carefully managed image was cracking, and this time, Hollywood itself was cataloging it for everyone to see. Next came the Spotify bombshell. Meghan's Archetypes podcast was supposed to be a cornerstone of her media empire. Millions of dollars, celebrity guests, and a platform to showcase her hard work and insights. But instead of building momentum, the project collapsed under its own hype. Reports say executives were frustrated by how little content she actually delivered. One insider even described it as wanting to be a content creator without creating content. The result? Spotify canceled the show after just one season. Colbert's joke hit with surgical precision. How hard do you have to not work at a job where you literally just talk? The audience erupted. The punchline wasn't just funny, it was devastatingly accurate. Her brand was built on hustle, determination, and the idea of turning ambition into results. Yet, here she was, publicly failing at the easiest content format imaginable. Talking for a living. This wasn't a matter of subjective criticism. It was objective failure, documented and undeniable. Millions of viewers watching late night saw a clear pattern emerge: a Netflix flop, a canceled podcast, and a brand that couldn't survive basic scrutiny. Each misstep confirmed what Kimmel had hinted at the night before: the disconnect between her polished persona and the reality of her professional output. Spotify wasn't just a project, it was a symbol. It represented what happens when an image-focused celebrity tries to convert fame into enterprise without the foundation, discipline, or authenticity to back it up. Late-night comedy didn't just report the failure, they framed it as evidence of a larger, unbroken pattern. And that pattern would continue to define how audiences saw her, no matter what her next venture might be. The next chapter in Meghan Markle's unraveling came with her Netflix show, With Love, Meghan, which premiered in March 2025. On paper, it was the perfect platform to showcase her lifestyle guru persona: warmth, relatability, and authenticity packaged into a cooking and family-themed series. But critics and audiences alike were unimpressed. Reviews were scathing. Critics called it boring, substance-free, and a vanity project. Audiences didn't show up. Ratings plummeted. The feedback was consistent. Meghan's warmth felt calculated. Her relatability rehearsed. Her authenticity performed. Watching her teach connection felt less like being inspired, and more like watching someone who had studied emotions but never actually felt them. For a public figure whose brand was built on being real and teaching others about authentic connection, the failure was devastating. For comedians like Kimmel and Colbert, this was comedy gold. The material wrote itself. Here was someone whose entire career at this point revolved around authenticity, and yet the world was telling her she came across as fake. Each joke landed perfectly because it wasn't exaggeration. It was a reflection of how viewers actually experienced her show. But the Netflix flop wasn't just a single failure. It became part of a broader, undeniable pattern. From canceled podcasts to flopped brands, the pieces were coming together. Meghan's carefully managed image, polished messaging, and multiple ambitious projects were consistently falling short. Audiences could see the cracks forming, and late-night comedy cataloged every one of them. By now, a clear pattern had emerged. Meghan Markle's career wasn't just marked by occasional missteps, it was defined by constant, rapid-fire rebranding. Every few months, she tried on a new identity, hoping it would stick. Actress on Suits? Didn't make her famous enough. Married into royalty and modernizing the princess role? 2 years in, she quit. Humanitarian activist? Briefly, podcast host? Canceled. Celebrity brand? Became a joke. Netflix cooking show? Flopped. And now, in January 2026, she was already plotting the next reinvention. Each reinvention came with polished visuals, carefully scripted words, and a meticulously curated image, but audiences had begun to notice the pattern. Unlike successful transformations, like Robert Downey Jr. going from troubled actor to Marvel superstar, or Gwyneth Paltrow building Goop from authenticity and credibility, Meghan's reinventions felt calculated. They weren't based on genuine growth or earned expertise. They were based on what she thought would sell. And that calculation made the desperation obvious. Late-night comedians quickly spotted this. Kimmel and Colbert didn't even need elaborate punchlines. They simply listed her failed identities, and audiences laughed not at exaggeration, but at the sheer predictability of the pattern. Every failed project, every canceled venture, every awkward rebrand became evidence of a central truth. Without authenticity or execution, a polished persona only goes so far. And the consequences weren't just comedic. With each failure cataloged publicly, every future project was viewed skeptically. Audiences, media, and Hollywood insiders had already begun preemptively judging her next move. Every rebrand now came with an invisible footnote. Will this fail too? Prince Harry's role in all of this made Meghan Markle's pattern of failures impossible to ignore. He left behind royal life, titles, and public expectation to support her ambitions, moving to Los Angeles to help build her brand empire. On paper, it was a story of freedom and love. In practice, it became part of the comedy narrative. Late-night shows weren't just mocking Meghan. They were highlighting the absurdity of a former prince promoting failed products, canceled podcasts, and a flopped Netflix show. Every project failure now reflected on Harry too. The dream they sold, a life of purpose, independence, and fulfillment, was visibly producing the opposite. He went from Duke to hype man, and the gap between expectation and reality became hilarious and devastating at the same time. Audience laughter wasn't cruel. It was recognition of a mismatch between narrative and results. Kimmel and Colbert framed it perfectly. Meghan's projects weren't just failing, Harry's support amplified the spectacle. When comedians pointed out the flop of her jam, her canceled podcast, or her inauthentic lifestyle show. It wasn't just commentary on her career. It was commentary on the entire package. Prince, spouse, and empire builder, all caught in a cycle of underachievement. The public saw it too. Liberal, educated, culture-focused audiences, the very demographic Meghan needed to buy her products and watch her content, now associated her brand with repeated failure. Every joke about her work ethic, every observation about her pattern of rebranding, was a subtle signal this persona may be polished, but it doesn't deliver. And once late-night comedy cataloged these failures, the impact was permanent. Every future venture would be viewed skeptically. Every new rebrand would be seen as here we go again. The pattern had been exposed and public perception had shifted. Hollywood and media insiders who once protected her had effectively stopped pretending. Her credibility wasn't just challenged, it was publicly undermined. With millions of viewers witnessing it firsthand. Once Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert had publicly cataloged Meghan Markle's failures, the effect rippled through Hollywood and the media. These weren't random critiques from tabloids or distant critics. This was the industry that had defended her for years, suddenly turning the spotlight on her. Comedians who once softened criticism, joked in her favor, or protected her image were done. And audiences noticed. The consequences were immediate and long-lasting. Every future project Meghan launched would now be measured against a very public track record of failure. Every new product, podcast, or show would be met with skepticism. Late-night comedy had effectively preempted public perception, creating a narrative where her ventures were almost guaranteed to be scrutinized and laughed at before they even launched. Hollywood insiders, who had once given her the benefit of the doubt, liberal, educated, culture-focused people who buy lifestyle products and stream content, were now less likely to engage with her projects. When comedians pointed out that she got fired from a talking job, flopped on Netflix, and repeatedly rebranded herself, audiences didn't see exaggeration, they saw patterns they recognized. Reality itself had become comedy, and that credibility gap is hard to recover from. Beyond the industry, the media ecosystem shifted too. Late night's cataloging of her failures meant that her image was now permanently linked to inauthenticity, overextension, and inconsistency. Public attacks from tabloids or the royal family no longer mattered as much. The real blow came from the platforms that had once given her protection. Her carefully managed narrative freedom, empowerment, and authenticity was now publicly questioned. And the audiences who mattered most were already laughing. The long-term effect is simple. Trust and credibility are now scarce resources for Meghan. Any new venture or rebrand will face instant comparison to the Netflix flop, Spotify cancellation, and failed lifestyle brand. Late-night comedy turned what had been private or ignored failures into public lessons. And the lesson is clear. Repeated patterns of mismanagement and inauthenticity cannot be spun away. Looking ahead, the big question is, what happens next for Meghan Markle? Speculation is everywhere, but the patterns are clear. Publicly, she could respond, rebrand again, or simply ignore the attacks while her team spins them as unfair. Rumors suggest she will likely continue the cycle of rebranding, launching new projects, hoping audiences forget past failures, and trying to reclaim credibility one venture at a time. But late-night comedy has made forgetting nearly impossible. Kimmel and Colbert cataloged every misstep, every flop, and every failed identity. Millions of viewers have now internalized the pattern. Projects fail, podcasts get canceled, brands collapse, and rebrands come quickly, none sticking long enough to earn trust. Every future venture will be met with preemptive skepticism. Every new attempt at authenticity will be compared to the carefully documented failures. There's also the human element. Meghan has built a team, a media presence, and a brand around curated perfection. Yet the comedy shows expose the cracks moments where the polished persona didn't match reality. The speculation isn't malicious, it's based on observable patterns. Audiences and Hollywood insiders now have a framework for what to expect, and that changes everything. Ultimately, the story isn't just about failures. It's about a cycle of ambition, public perception, and accountability. Meghan's path forward will depend on actual self-reflection and meaningful change, but history suggests the most likely scenario is another rebrand, another project, and another round of public scrutiny. And late-night comedy will be ready to document it, framing it not as rumor but as part of a recognizable, unbroken pattern. The key takeaway: when Hollywood itself stops pretending, image management alone can't save you. And for Meghan Markle, millions of viewers now know exactly what to expect. The story of Meghan Markle's late-night takedowns isn't just about jokes or celebrity critique, it's about a pattern finally exposed. Over years of carefully managed appearances, polished messaging, and ambitious projects, the gap between persona and reality had grown too wide to ignore. Kimmel and Colbert didn't invent criticism, they documented truth, wrapped in humor, that millions could recognize and understand instantly. From the Netflix flop to the canceled Spotify podcast, from the failed lifestyle brand to the constant cycle of rebranding, every misstep built a narrative of inauthenticity and overreach. Prince Harry's support, rather than shielding her, only amplified the spectacle. A former prince promoting projects that consistently failed, turning a personal life into a public lesson in ambition gone awry. Late-night comedy didn't just expose isolated incidents, it cataloged a clear pattern. Audiences, Hollywood insiders, and media observers now see the sequence of events as undeniable. Every future venture will be viewed skeptically, every rebrand met with preemptive judgment, and every claim of authenticity tested against a history that's been publicly documented. Ultimately, this isn't about malicious attacks or unfair scrutiny. It's about reality catching up with image. When the industry that once defended you decides to stop, the carefully curated persona that once protected you collapses. For Meghan Markle, the lesson is clear. Repeated failure, inconsistency, and inauthenticity aren't things you can spin away. They become part of your public story, permanently cataloged for millions to see. And so,